Where's this go out? South
Um,
England. And they didn't like it. They refused it and turned it down. We'll leave and, do it that way. Very, very difficult person. I don't know anyone who's got a good word for him.
The Modfather may have inspired a generation, but Paul Weller wasn't afraid to tear down fellow singers he couldn't stand. Known for his brutal honesty, Weller often clashed with the industry's biggest names, leaving no room for fake praise. His sharp tongue and strong opinions made enemies as quickly as he made hits. Let's uncover the top 3 singers Paul Weller hated the most. Robert Smith. Among the many feuds in the music world, few have carried the intensity and bitterness of Paul Weller's remarks about Robert Smith, the enigmatic frontman of The Cure. While Weller has never been shy about expressing his opinions on fellow artists, his feelings toward Smith transcend mere critique, entering the realm of personal disdain. Unlike typical disagreements over musical style or artistic direction, Weller's words and gestures toward Smith have often been sharp, cutting, and deeply personal. From mocking Smith's appearance to openly threatening him, Weller's comments reveal a level of animosity that stands out even in the famously combative world of British rock. The origins of this tension can be traced back to the mid-1980s. In a 1985 interview, Robert Smith offered a statement that would indirectly set him at odds with Weller. Smith, discussing the punk movement, took a dismissive stance. "Punk had nothing to do with politics or social issues," he declared, adding pointedly, "People like Paul Weller who think they're socially aware, believing in them doesn't do any good." To Weller, whose career with the Jam was rooted in the politically charged, working-class ethos of punk, such remarks were more than mere words. They were an affront to everything he stood for. The Jam's music had always combined sharp social commentary with raw, energetic rock, and Weller had built his identity on the idea that music could, and should, challenge social norms and provoke thought. Smith's dismissal of punk as politically meaningless effectively negated Weller's artistic mission in one sweeping statement. Weller did not respond immediately with measured critique. His reaction would eventually escalate into full-blown ridicule and public mockery. Over the years, whenever the subject of The Cure or Robert Smith arose in interviews, Weller's contempt became increasingly vivid. Unlike other feuds, which often remain confined to passing remarks or cryptic references in lyrics, Weller's disapproval has always been unfiltered and visceral. He has consistently conveyed not just disagreement, but genuine repulsion. For him, Smith embodies qualities that are antithetical to his musical and personal philosophy: introspection without edge, gloom without substance, and a superficial sense of artistry divorced from social responsibility. The feud took on renewed life in more recent years, demonstrating that Weller's disdain for Smith has not waned with time. In a feature for Record Collector, a journalist covering Weller's career made an offhand remark that Noel Gallagher's new song carried a vibe reminiscent of The Cure's classic track A Forest. While such a comparison might have been innocuous for many artists, Weller's response was explosive. His reaction combined disbelief, scorn, and biting humor, underscoring the depth of his antipathy. "Really, I can't stand them," he said, his tone dripping with disgust. But Weller's critique was not limited to the music alone. He turned his attention squarely on Smith himself, mocking his appearance and, in a moment of raw honesty, even alluding to violence. "He's my age, isn't he? I'd never work with him. I'd probably slap him." The casual threat, though perhaps exaggerated for effect, signals a level of personal animosity that goes far beyond standard professional rivalry. Weller's remarks are striking not only for their intensity, but for the insight they provide into his worldview. Unlike Smith, whose music often embraces introspection, melancholy, and the cultivation of a carefully curated Gothic image, Weller champions energy, directness, and social awareness. His art is steeped in the belief that musicians have a responsibility to engage with the world around them, to provoke thought, and to speak truth to power. In contrast, Weller perceives Smith as embodying a kind of self-indulgent gloominess, an approach that is, in his eyes, both aesthetically and morally insufficient. The personal attacks, the mockery of Smith's appearance, the open statement of physical aggression are extensions of Weller's belief that Smith's persona and music represent a failure of artistic purpose. The feud also underscores the contrast in public personas between the two men. Robert Smith, despite Weller's attacks, has maintained a calm, enigmatic, and almost impervious public image. Known for his introspective lyrics, haunting melodies, and distinctive Gothic appearance, Smith rarely engages in public disputes, preferring to let his music and long-standing career speak for itself. Weller, by contrast, thrives on direct confrontation, verbal candor, and visible passion. Where Smith retreats into controlled mystique, Weller confronts head-on, unafraid to express anger, ridicule, or even playful aggression. This clash of personalities, introverted contemplation versus outwardly expressed intensity, has only amplified the tension between them, turning a difference in artistic philosophy into a personal feud. Moreover, Weller's sustained criticism reflects a broader pattern in his career. His unwillingness to compromise or dilute his opinions to appease peers or the public. Throughout his decades-long career, Weller has not shied away from openly criticizing other iconic musicians, whether Sting, Robert Smith, or contemporary artists who fail, in his estimation, to demonstrate authenticity, attitude, or substance. In Weller's view, Smith is emblematic of an artistic approach that prioritizes image and style over message and social engagement. The repeated public disparagement is thus not simply a personal vendetta. It is a defense of a musical ethos that Weller has spent his life advocating. The sustained nature of Weller's feud with Smith has also made it a point of fascination for fans and journalists alike. In the broader context of British music, it exemplifies the ongoing tension between different schools of thought regarding the purpose of music. Weller's world is one of engagement, immediacy, and social relevance. Smith's is one of introspection, mood, and meticulously crafted sonic landscapes. When these two philosophies collide, sparks are inevitable, and Weller has consistently provided both the sparks and the fire, ensuring that the dispute remains part of rock lore. Sting Paul Weller, the legendary figure behind the Jam and later the Style Council, has long been known for his sharp tongue and candid opinions. In a music world where public politeness often masks private disdain, Weller has rarely shied away from expressing his feelings, especially when it comes to his fellow musicians. While he has critiqued countless artists throughout his career, his animosity toward Sting, the iconic frontman of the Police, has been particularly intense, bordering on personal vendetta. The depth of Weller's antipathy became undeniably public during an infamous incident at London's Royal Albert Hall. Attending a performance that involved, or even simply referenced, Sting, Weller made a dramatic statement. He spat on a photograph of the singer. The image, intended as a symbolic gesture, shocked onlookers and immediately became fodder for headlines. The Mirror, reporting on the incident, described it as part of a vitriolic hate campaign directed at Sting, highlighting that Weller's disdain extended beyond mere words. In the rock and punk community, spitting is a gesture of extreme contempt, and for Weller, it seemed a fitting way to manifest his feelings in a manner words alone could not convey. This act was not an isolated outburst born of a fleeting grudge. Weller has been unflinching in interviews, articulating his distaste for Sting with a bluntness few other musicians dare to display publicly. On one occasion, he remarked, "He's a horrible man. Not my cup of tea at all." Rubbish. The simplicity and finality of the statement capture the essence of Weller's approach. No elaborate critique, no nuanced explanation, just unvarnished opinion. But beneath the surface, these words reflect a deeper frustration with what Weller perceives as Sting's lack of authenticity. Weller has repeatedly expressed the view that Sting lacks the qualities that Weller values most in a musician: edge, attitude, and raw, unfiltered presence. In Weller's eyes, Sting represents a polished, perhaps overly refined persona, devoid of the rebellious spirit that the Jam once championed. While Sting's music has achieved international acclaim, and his public image remains relatively untarnished, Weller's critiques suggest that fame and technical skill alone do not command respect in his world. The Jam's ethos, rooted in the British punk and mod revival scenes, prioritized sincerity, confrontation, and emotional intensity, qualities Weller feels Sting fundamentally lacks. Over the years, the animosity has persisted, despite the passage of decades and changes in the musical landscape. Sting, now a globally recognized solo artist and humanitarian, seems largely unaffected, maintaining a composed public demeanor. Weller, however, continues to express himself passionately, his words and gestures fueled by a combination of personal distaste and artistic principle. In interviews spanning multiple decades, he has consistently maintained that Sting's work is rubbish and that the singer is not my cup of tea. For Weller, this is more than a matter of musical preference. It is a moral judgment, an indictment of what he perceives as Sting's lack of genuine substance. The roots of Weller's disdain may also be traced to a clash of personalities and cultural attitudes. The Jam, and later the Style Council, were grounded in working-class sensibilities and a confrontational, often socially aware stance. Weller's performances were charged with an intensity and immediacy that resonated with audiences who valued authenticity over commercial polish. Sting, by contrast, evolved from the Police's reggae-tinged pop rock into a solo career marked by sophisticated arrangements, jazz influences, and collaborations with world music artists. While these accomplishments cemented Sting's status as a musical polymath, they also positioned him in a sphere that Weller seems to view as detached from the raw emotional core of British rock, a world Weller inhabits and fiercely defends. Weller's criticisms go beyond the superficial. They suggest a philosophical divide. Weller champions music that confronts, challenges, and provokes, whereas Sting's work, in Weller's estimation, seeks refinement and acceptance. This fundamental difference in artistic outlook has made reconciliation unlikely. Weller's bluntness, his willingness to publicly denounce those he dislikes, and his gestures of contempt, such as the infamous photo-spitting episode, are extensions of his commitment to an unfiltered, uncompromising approach to art. He embodies a kind of musical purism, one that resists the seductions of celebrity, mainstream acclaim, or stylistic compromise. The public has long watched this unusual dynamic with fascination. While many in the music industry have had conflicts or rivalries, few have escalated to such a level of visible disdain. Weller's behavior toward Sting has become almost emblematic of his broader persona, a rock icon unafraid to speak his mind, untroubled by conventions of civility, and relentless in his pursuit of authenticity. Fans of Weller often view his outspokenness as part of his charm and integrity, while critics may see it as excessive or even performative. Regardless, the intensity of his antipathy towards Sting cannot be ignored. Interestingly, the contrast between the two musicians' public personas only serves to highlight the tension. Sting, despite Weller's attacks, remains composed, almost serene in interviews and performances. He does not engage in public displays of retaliation, preferring to let his work and his long-standing reputation speak for itself. This stoicism, however, may only intensify Weller's frustration. For an artist who thrives on unfiltered expression and visible conviction, Sting's calm detachment could be seen as a provocation in itself, a refusal to acknowledge Weller's judgment or rise to the confrontation that Weller values. Over time, this feud, or at least Weller's animosity, has become part of rock folklore, cited in media accounts and music retrospectives as a notable clash between two very different approaches to fame, music, and personality. The Royal Albert Hall incident, in particular, has been referenced repeatedly as a symbol of Weller's unvarnished honesty and Sting's unwitting position as the object of such scorn. In a broader context, this feud illustrates the enduring tension within British music between raw, working-class rebellion and polished, internationally successful artistry. Weller, firmly on the side of rebellion, remains unrepentant, unapologetic, and passionate in his condemnation. Even as Weller's career has evolved and he himself has embraced a range of musical styles, from punk to soul to jazz-infused pop, his opinion of Sting has remained resolute. For decades, he has maintained that Sting lacks what makes music compelling to him: immediacy, edge, and a willingness to confront both the audience and oneself. In interviews, his tone is never ambiguous. He makes it clear that his disdain is deep-rooted and unchanging, a testament to both his personal convictions and his commitment to the ethos of the music he loves. James Blunt. Paul Weller, often hailed as the mod father of British music, has long been synonymous with uncompromising artistry, sharp social commentary, and a rebellious spirit that permeates both his music and public persona. From his early days with The Jam, where he infused punk energy with working-class consciousness, to the sophisticated soul and jazz influences of the Style Council, and finally to his enduring solo career, Weller has always maintained a fierce dedication to authenticity. His uncompromising nature extends beyond songwriting and performance. It shapes the way he engages with the wider music world. Weller's critiques are seldom mild, measured, or diplomatic. They are raw, forthright, and often brutally honest, reflecting a man who values substance over popularity and integrity over conformity. It was in this context that Weller's famous dismissal of James Blunt made waves. The story unfolded around the Brit Awards, an event where collaborations, duets, and cross-generational pairings are common. The notion of Weller, a stalwart of British rock with decades of cultural credibility, sharing a stage with Blunt, a contemporary singer-songwriter known for his smooth ballads and mainstream appeal, struck a nerve. When questioned about the hypothetical duet, Weller delivered a response that was shocking even by his own standards. "I'd rather eat my own pie cake than duet with him." The statement was characteristically blunt, leaving no room for misinterpretation and immediately grabbing headlines. The reaction from fans, critics, and the media was swift. Weller's remark was interpreted as the quintessential expression of his curmudgeonly persona, reflecting a mixture of musical snobbery, personal taste, and protective pride over his artistic identity. To Weller, James Blunt's music represents the antithesis of the raw, authentic, and socially aware ethos he has championed for decades. Whereas The Jam and the Style Council were steeped in political commentary, social critique, and a visceral connection with audiences, Blunt's work is polished, radio-friendly, and emotionally accessible in a way that, to Weller, may feel superficial or commercially driven. The contrast between the two artists' philosophies could hardly be starker, one rooted in rebellion and cultural critique, the other in melodic introspection and mainstream appeal. Yet Weller's fierce dismissal was met with a response that highlighted the stark difference in their temperaments. James Blunt, far from reacting with anger or indignation, appeared almost indifferent to the insult. Calm, measured, and seemingly unfazed by Weller's vitriol, Blunt stated, "I was never asked to do a duet with Paul Weller, so I don't know why he said that. I don't care." His response, understated and composed, emphasized a key contrast. While Weller thrives on confrontational honesty and unfiltered expression, Blunt embodies a professional detachment, allowing slights to slide off him without public escalation. This juxtaposition of personalities, the fiery, passionate modfather versus the serene, pragmatic singer-songwriter, made the exchange both compelling and revealing for observers of the British music scene. Weller's remark can be understood as more than mere personal disdain. It is emblematic of his broader views on music, authenticity, and artistic value. Throughout his career, Weller has consistently criticized artists whom he perceives as lacking depth, edge, or attitude. He prizes originality, social engagement, and a willingness to challenge both audiences and societal norms. In his eyes, a collaboration with Blunt would not just be personally unappealing, it would represent a clash of ideals, a dilution of the values that have guided his career since the 1970s. His choice of language, deliberately shocking and provocative, underscores the seriousness with which he guards these principles. In Weller's world, a duet is not a casual opportunity for exposure. It is a reflection of shared ethos, artistic compatibility, and mutual respect. By stating that he would rather commit an act as extreme as eating his own excrement than collaborate with Blunt, Weller conveys that, for him, there is no common ground between their artistic worlds. The public reaction to the exchange further illuminates the enduring fascination with Weller's outspoken nature. Social media, music forums, and entertainment outlets buzzed with debate, dissecting not just Weller's statement, but what it implied about generational divides, musical taste, and the role of authenticity in the modern music industry. Fans of Weller lauded his honesty, seeing it as a reaffirmation of his status as a guardian of artistic integrity. Conversely, some critics suggested that his comment was unnecessarily vitriolic, a relic of an era when British rock veterans openly wielded their reputations as arbiters of taste. Regardless of perspective, the incident reinforced Weller's reputation as a man who speaks without filter, whose opinions are uncompromising, and whose disdain, once expressed, leaves a lasting impression. Interestingly, Blunt's composed response also sheds light on the broader dynamics at play in such public musical feuds. Unlike Weller, who often intertwines personal feeling with critique, Blunt's reaction reflects a philosophy of professional detachment. He neither escalates the confrontation nor engages in public rebuttal. Instead, he acknowledges the remark, clarifies the factual context, that no duet was ever proposed, and moves on. This contrast between the two artists is telling. Weller thrives on unvarnished confrontation, while Blunt embodies a more modern, media-savvy approach, choosing equilibrium over conflict. The encounter, brief as it was, thus serves as a microcosm of evolving attitudes within the music industry, where the fiery confrontations of the past increasingly collide with contemporary norms of diplomacy and composure. The incident also resonates when viewed in the context of Weller's long-standing career and his broader pattern of outspoken critiques. Weller has famously expressed disdain for numerous contemporaries, from Sting to Robert Smith, often combining musical evaluation with personal judgment in ways that are startlingly candid. His remarks about Blunt fit seamlessly into this pattern, reflecting both a consistent philosophy and a deeply ingrained personal code. Weller will not compromise his principles for fame, commercial gain, or social expectation. In this sense, his outburst is less about Blunt as an individual and more about what Blunt represents, a polished, mainstream approach to music that, in Weller's estimation, lacks the grit, honesty, and social awareness that define his own work. What do you think about three singers that Paul Weller especially hates? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.